So we have another case of law enforcement essentially kidnapping somebody and throwing them into an unmarked van and driving off. Now, in this instance, it is not the feds. It is actually police in New York. So I'll give you more of those details in a bit. But first, let me show you the videos. There are multiple angles to this, and I'm showing you multiple angles for a purpose, because the police claim something happened during these videos that I think clearly didn't happen. But I'm going to show you and tell you what that is. I'm going to show you all the videos back to back. And I think there's 3 different clips, so watch for that. But it's going to be the exact same sequence of events in all 3 clips, just from all different angles. So watch what happens. All right, so I just showed you all 3 videos. What happened there was they had taken a protester, as described in the first tweet here. This was from Michelle. This is when the video first came out. New York City is taking after Portland. A trans female protester was pulled into an unmarked van at the Abolition Park protest. This was at 2nd Avenue and 25th Street. Now, before I get to what the police claim, let me first give you the protester's name here. So in the video, which was posted to Twitter by the American Civil Liberties Union, a protester who has since been identified as 18-year-old trans woman Nikki Stone can be seen forced into a van by plainclothes officers during a demonstration on 2nd Avenue and 25th Street in Kips Bay on Tuesday. Now, let me show you what the cops claim. From NYPD News, in regard to a video on social media that took place at 2nd Avenue and 25th Street, a woman taken into custody in an unmarked van was wanted for damaging police cameras during 5 separate criminal incidents in and around City Hall Park. The arresting officers were assaulted with rocks and bottles. You can go back and watch the videos. Just scroll back in the timeline, watch the videos again. There is no rocks and bottles being thrown. The only thing that even comes close is during this video, you can see a plastic, I think it's over here, a plastic bottle rolling towards the van. Look at that. Plastic bottle rolling towards the van. That's the closest. That's the closest. That's the closest any of these videos come to showing rocks and bottles being thrown. A plastic water bottle rolling across the ground. This shows you how often, and you know, my other videos show you this as well, how often the police lie in their statements. There's multiple angles of this. None of them show. They acknowledge that it is a video on social media. They must know the video doesn't show the officers being assaulted with rocks and bottles. Yet still, they attempt to claim this. And they do this because there are multiple reports on what happened. And what reporting always does, especially local reports that never question anything, they just copy and paste what the police say without actually verifying the statement. So if you look up this story, I think there's a local, I forget the exact website now, but there's at least one local CBS News or NBC or Fox, but all they do is they print the statement from the police. Police say that they were being assaulted with rocks and bottles, and then they just move on. They don't attempt to correct that information. They don't state that while the police say that they were assaulted with rocks and bottles, the video does not show this. They don't say that. They never verify these statements. All they do is they copy and paste what the cops say, and what that ends up allowing is that it allows this misinformation to continue. It allows the police to say whatever the hell they want, to paint whatever narrative they want that benefits them, and the reporters that report on it are not going to be held accountable. And when they are held accountable, it's going to be an opinion piece. Oh, it has to be an opinion piece to verify that, to clarify that the cops are lying. When all you got to do is watch the video. Watch all three angles. They're not being assaulted. Now, they go on here. They continue their thread here, saying when officers from the warrant squad took the woman into custody in a gray NYPD minivan this evening, they were assaulted with rocks and bottles. Again, they repeat this lie. The warrant squad uses unmarked vehicles to effectively locate wanted suspects. Do you know what this protester did? They spray painted some cameras. That's it. They spray painted some cameras. Now, is it illegal? Yes. Should we expect people like that to face some kind of charges? Some repercussions for those actions? Sure. But to do it in the way that they did it, in the middle of a peaceful protest, in an unmarked van, stop the vehicle, have like 5 guys jump out in plain clothes, that could be anybody. They could just say they're officers. Who knows? They're in plain clothes, jumping out of an unmarked van, grabbing a protester and throwing them into a vehicle. Is that really the best way to go about this? And then, of course, what ends up happening is that protesters get pissed off and angry, and it escalates the situation. When it was a peaceful protest, as you saw in that last video, they were just, at the beginning of the video, peaceful protest going down the street, and here they are escalating the situation by grabbing somebody who's just protesting with them off the street in a violent way, throwing them into an unmarked van and driving off. On the heels of this happening in Portland with the feds doing it. They must understand the implication here, but they don't care. They don't care. They'll grab whoever they want, whenever they want, in whatever manner they want to enact their power over people. Now, I want to go to some reactions here. So actually, this is from an update to the story. So this from Carolina Rivera, who I believe is the New York City council member for the 2nd district, I believe. But she is the council member for that area. We've just received confirmation that Nikki has been released. Thank you to all the advocates who have been bringing support and attention. Now it's time to hear from New York City Mayor about how he will address this arrest and the future of unidentifiable policing in New York City. So Bill de Blasio's statement, I didn't even bring it up to include in my piece here. It's useless. It's one of those things where, he says nothing. He just talks about how, yes, it's so bad. The protester or you shouldn't spray paint or damage public property. You're going to face repercussions. And by the way, the way they did it was bad, but whatever. Like, the mayor is in a position of power to change the behavior of these officers, to do something. And it's funny because the cops hate him anyways. The cops, the NYPD hate, the police union hates Bill de Blasio. But still, he has no actual course of action when it comes to making any real changes. There was that attempt or appearance of change when they recently discussed how they were going to be cutting the police budget, when in reality all they were doing was moving some of the money from the police department into another area that was still going to be going to the cops. But it was basically, you know, on a spreadsheet, it was put into a different column, but it's still going to the cops. So that's as far as he'll go. And they hate him. They hate him anyways, and he gives in every time. It's really disappointing and really sad that Bill de Blasio was somebody who people thought was going to bring in some real change. And, you know, I guess in the case of stop and frisk, he did. And then from then on, it's kind of been all downhill. From what I'm not a New Yorker, but from what I'm hearing of people that expected more out of Bill de Blasio, they've been incredibly disappointed by him. Now, some other reactions here. The ACLU says, breaking, we're receiving reports that at least one protester was abducted off the streets today by unmarked officers, this time in New York City. These dangerous, abusive, and indefensible actions must stop. Law enforcement must be held accountable. Nima Shirazi here tweets out, if this video were of Tehran instead of New York, racist right-wing social media would flip out. It would be shown nonstop on Fox News and MSNBC, and there would already be calls from Democrats and Republicans alike for international sanctions, airstrikes, and regime change. And you know that is true. If this exact same thing were happening, if this exact same thing was a video of, you know, whether it's Tehran, whether it's a Latin American country, if this was happening anywhere else, the U.S. would use this as a way to say, oh, look what they're doing to the civilians in this country. We must go in and save them. But it happens in New York, and nothing changes. It only gets worse. And this reaction here from Mehdi Hassan, tweeting out, just on a practical point, in the current climate, what's to stop anyone from claiming to be the feds and pulling up in an unmarked car and grabbing/kidnapping a random person and driving off, and onlookers assuming it be the feds? Genuine question. Alluding to what I discussed earlier, there's no verification here. How is anybody supposed to know who these people actually are when they're driving these unmarked vehicles, wearing plain clothes, or even in the case of Portland, where they were dressed in military garb? Still, no way to identify them, like who the individuals were that were taking people off the street into unmarked vans. They weren't saying anything. They weren't saying why those people were under arrest or being taken in. They just grabbed them. They're silent the entire time, grab them, put them into the van, and drive off. So this is, look, these kinds of videos, I barely have to make a case here for defunding the police. And again, when I say defunding, I'm talking about moving resources away from police departments into other areas. I'm not saying that there should be no way to enforce the law ever. I'm not saying that if you call 911, if there's a bank robbery or someone's breaking into your home, that no one's going to show up. Defund the police simply means defund the police. And the debate really is about how much defunding. So when I say defund the police, I'm talking about issues like mental health, issues like domestic disputes, like addiction, homelessness. The cops shouldn't be brought into those situations. And in terms of also demilitarizing the police, and I mean, this alone as well, I'm not sure how to categorize this, but grabbing somebody off the street, even if it's for actions that they have committed, grabbing somebody off the street like this in the middle of a peaceful protest and doing it forcefully and just throwing people into a van, an unmarked van, and with plain clothes and driving off. However you categorize this also should not be going on. This at least feels like a police state. How are people supposed to feel safe in their communities if they're always afraid of the people that are supposed to be watching over them? So defund the police simply means strip resources away, put priority elsewhere, move some of that money, a lot of that money, into public health or public housing, other areas that can deal with various situations that cops are normally called to respond to.